Welcome to BTech Modding. This is part 3 of our project ONDA version 2, and as you can see, I already cleaned out all of the pieces, all of the parts. I washed them thoroughly. I finished drilling all of the holes that were left to be drilled on the aluminum parts, like the little brackets. I made these holes at the bottom, so everything is ready to be assembled together. This video, as I anticipated in the last one, will be about assembling the structure, so all of the custom parts will come together, and in the next video you'll see the final assembly, as in with the hardware and the water cooling as well. I also trimmed down these aluminum rods, which were 5 millimeters longer than I measured. I had bought this pre-cut, so it wasn't my doing. The moons were all polished up, obviously, as I anticipated, and this took about 3 full days of work. It was a nightmare, and I really hope the new CNC will give me pre-finished acrylic edges, because I really don't want to do this again with this many parts. So since there's so much clear acrylic and polished parts, as well as these aluminum parts, which are incredible fingerprints magnets, I will use nitrile gloves during the whole assembly process, and also the handling once the build is finished, because I really don't want to get it all mushed up and greasy. So as for the order things will happen, I'm gonna take the moons and aluminum brackets that have to be fixed together, because once all the moons are mounted together, it could be more difficult, because there's not much space in between them to fit my hand and work with screws. So I'm going to do it beforehand. Then I'm going to go ahead and put all the moons together, like I showed you in the last video. Then it's time for the pedestal, and then all of the hardware mounting plates. So without further ado, let's get to the build. And here it is. The new ONDA is finally all together, and I must admit this surpassed my expectations by a lot, especially for the aluminum finish, which obviously I didn't make. I bought this aluminum with this finish on purpose because I think it looks amazing. Probably the camera doesn't really catch this, but the aluminum has some kind of iridescent reflection, which adds a lot to the overall aesthetic, and it makes it very unique looking, especially when looking at it while moving all around it. All of the reflections from the aluminum as well as the polished acrylic really makes this thing look phenomenal in my opinion. It's also a lot more robust than the original ONDA because the original ONDA wasn't held up with this by screws. It was just the aluminum rods fitted inside the pocket on the wooden base. It wasn't a solid solution at all, but with this thing isn't going anywhere. During the assembly, I did have to take out the internal rods one more time because they were still a little too long, which is weird, but I think it was because when I did the test in the last video, there still was the protective film on all of the moons, and that added a fair amount of thickness to the overall measurement. But other than that, the 3D model had those rods measuring 43.5 centimeters, if I remember correctly, and the rods as I bought them were 44 centimeters. I trimmed them down to the right measurement, and even then they still had about 2 millimeters of excess. And I think this just goes to show how much acrylic can vary in tolerances in terms of thickness, because that change from the 3D model to the real thing is probably related to that. So this means these moons are probably a little different in thickness, and it's usually not so much, but when you add 10 to the same measurements, it does add up. So I'm also super happy with how the inserts in the acrylic worked. They are very precise and very flush. If there's one thing I'm worried about is keeping this thing clean. I'm not referring to the open air design, because I think the open air design is actually better for keeping it clean, since you don't have to open everything up in order to remove the dust. You just blow it. But every single bit of this thing is a real magnet for fingerprints and the grease in general. So it does have to be treated with gloves. I'm glad I used them, but that's to be expected when you have so much glossy stuff, obviously. So I can't wait to see this with all the hardware mounted, but we'll have to wait next week for that to happen, and that's going to close this project. If you don't want to miss that, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, as well as follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, builds.gg, Discord. Also check out our merchandise shop, all links in the description. So thank you guys for watching, and see you next week.